All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we're diving headfirst into the Four Noble Truths.
Oh, head first, huh? Guess there's no easing into it with this one.
Now, with this one, no, sir. This is like the bedrock of Buddhist philosophy.
Oh, okay.
The whole shebang.
Okay, I'm with you. And yeah, you can't really go wrong with starting at the beginning.
Exactly. And to help us unpack all of this, we're turning to, you guessed it, a text. The Four Noble Truths by Thanissaro Bhikkhu. Ever come across this one?
Oh, absolutely. It's a classic for a reason. Bhikkhu really gets to the heart of these teachings in a way that's, well, surprisingly relatable.
Right. And that's what I love about this deep dive we're doing today. Because these truths, they're not just some abstract concepts. They're like a user manual for living a less stress, more awesome life.
100%. And one thing I really appreciate about how Bhikkhu frames these truths is he emphasizes approaching them not as some rigid dogma, but more like categories of experience and a new lens to view, well, everything.
I like a new lens. Because, let's face it, the old lens, the me versus the world one, yeah, that one's not exactly working out so well, is it?
Tell me about it. And the text really doesn't mince words about this either. It's like Bhikkhu's saying, hey, that whole story you keep telling yourself about you being this separate, static self, that's the root of a whole lot of unnecessary stress.
So, like, time for a rewrite.
Big time. And he actually uses this great analogy to illustrate this. He compares our usual way of seeing ourselves, this idea of a solid me, to building a structure out of Legos, you know? But the catch is these Legos are constantly shifting and changing, and we're stuck there desperately trying to hold it all together, but it's just, well,
A recipe for disaster.
pretty much. You're constantly clinging, grasping, trying to maintain control, but it's an uphill battle. It's exhausting.
It's like trying to build a sandcastle right at the water's edge. You're like, what are you expecting? The tide's going to come in.
Exactly. So that's where the Four Noble Truths come in. They offer us a different framework, one based on this fundamental principle of cause and effect.
So instead of feeling like we're at the mercy of external forces, we start to see how our own actions, our own minds, play a role in creating our experience.
On the money. And that brings us to our first noble truth.
Drum roll, please. The first noble truth. Stress is universal.
Now, before you run for the hills.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say. Buddhism isn't about being miserable. It's about acknowledging the misery so we can do something about it.
Nailed it. Think of it this way. If you go to the doctor feeling totally crummy and they just smile and say, you look great, that's not exactly helpful, right?
No, not really reassuring, is it?
Exactly. The Buddha is more like a good doctor, first acknowledging the reality of suffering so we can then address it. That's the whole point.
Right. We have to get real about what's going on before we can even start to heal. And, you know, it's funny. The text actually points out how most people just accept unhappiness as like a given. Bad weather, traffic jams, you know, just another Tuesday.
The old that's life shrug. But the Buddha was like, nope. True lasting happiness, it's totally possible.
And he gave us the roadmap to get there. But first, we got to know what we're dealing with, right?
Right. Like any good doctor, the Buddha breaks down suffering into 3 distinct flavors.
Flavors, huh? Okay, I'm intrigued. Hit me with the first one.
All right, so the first one's pretty straightforward. The stressfulness of pain.
The good old-fashioned kind. Stub your toe, break your heart, you know the drill.
Exactly. Physical pain, emotional pain, just part of being human. Then we've got the stressfulness of fabrication, and this one gets a little more interesting.
Oh, how so? Does this mean like making up problems that aren't really there?
Kind of. It's more about how our own minds can create a whole lot of unnecessary suffering through, well, clinging. Clinging to ideas, perceptions, expectations.
That don't match up with reality.
Bingo. It's that constant mental chatter, the endless loop of what-ifs and should-bes that can really drive you crazy.
Our brain's like a hamster wheel sometimes, just spinning and spinning and getting nowhere.
Oh, perfect analogy. And as if that wasn't enough, we've got the stressfulness of change. This one's kind of a mind bender.
Oh, I know this one. It's like even when things are good, there's this underlying anxiety because you know it won't last forever.
You've got it. It's not about being pessimistic or denying the good stuff. It's about recognizing the impermanent nature of, well, pretty much everything.
So clinging to anything, a feeling, a possession, even an idea, it's like setting yourself up for a fall.
Exactly. And that's the thing about the Four Noble Truths. They're not here to bum us out. They're here to wake us up.
So we've established that stress, in all its glorious forms, is pretty much unavoidable. It's like that one friend who always shows up uninvited. But the question is, what's the root cause? Why all this stress in the first place?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And luckily for us, the Buddha provided an answer.
Don't tell me it's those double chocolate chip cookies again.
Close, but no cigar. The second noble truth points the finger at craving as the real culprit.
Okay, I was kind of joking about the cookies, but now you've got me thinking, are we really just talking about wanting stuff here?
It's bigger than that. It's about that gap between how we want things to be and how they actually are. And that gap, it's a breeding ground for suffering.
So like when I'm stuck in traffic and I'm craving that clear road ahead, the thing that's causing me stress isn't really the traffic itself, it's my desire for it to be different.
Exactly. And the text gets into all the different flavors of craving, too. Like, obviously, there's the craving for pleasure, for sensory gratification.
The good stuff, right.
Right. But then there's also this more insidious craving to become something we're not, chasing after some idealized version of ourselves.
Oh, tell me about it. Like, if I could just get that promotion, then I'd finally be happy.
The classic trap. And the irony is, even if we somehow manage to achieve all those external things we crave, the underlying craving itself, it doesn't magically disappear.
It's like trying to fill a bottomless pit.
Yeah.
No matter how much you throw in there, it's never enough.
Perfect analogy. So we've got this stress that's woven into the fabric of life itself, and at the root of it all, this insatiable craving that just won't quit. So what's the solution? Are we just doomed?
Don't leave me hanging. Tell me there's hope.
There's always hope. That's what's so amazing about the Four Noble Truths. They don't just point out the problem, they offer a solution. And that brings us to our next truth. The cessation of suffering is possible.
Hold on, back up. Are we talking about, like, achieving some blissful state where nothing bothers us ever again?
Not quite. The text is clear about this. It's not about denying or suppressing our experiences or pretending everything's hunky-dory all the time.
It's not about sticking our heads in the sand and whistling a happy tune.
Nope. It's about uprooting the cause of the suffering in the first place. And remember what we said about the second noble truth?
Craving, right? Craving's the culprit. So to end suffering, we need to end craving. But how do we actually do that?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, so last thing we were talking about how to actually, get off the suffering train. And it sounds like the third noble truth is saying, hey, good news, there's a way out. But it's not exactly a one-way ticket, is it?
You got it. This is where the rubber meets the road, where the philosophy gets real practical.
And that's where the fourth noble truth comes in, right? The Eightfold Path.
Bingo! Now, before you get overwhelmed.
Oh, too late. I'm already there. 8 different things to master. It's a bit much, isn't it?
Think of it more like a set of guidelines, not rules. Skillful qualities to cultivate over time, like learning a new language or an instrument. It takes practice.
Okay, that's a little less intimidating. So what's the first step? What's the first note we're learning to play on this Eightfold Path?
Right view. It's about seeing things clearly, understanding the nature of reality as it is, not how we wish it to be.
So kind of like accepting those first 3 noble truths we were talking about?
Exactly. Accepting them and then going, okay, now what? And that's where right resolve comes in. It's the intention, the commitment to cultivate wholesome qualities in ourselves.
To actually do the work, not just talk about it.
Exactly. It's like, okay, we've acknowledged the problem. Now we're rolling up our sleeves and saying, let's do this.
All right, I can dig it. So we're seeing clearly we're committed to making a change. What's next?
Well, from there, we move into right speech, right action, and right livelihood.
So this is where it starts to impact our day-to-day lives.
100%. Right speech is about speaking in ways that are truthful, kind, and beneficial. Right action is about acting ethically, with integrity. And right livelihood, that's about making sure our work, our career, is aligned with our values.
I like that because it's not enough to just meditate on a mountaintop, right? We
Yeah.
have to bring these teachings into the real world, into our relationships, our jobs, everything.
Exactly. And that brings us to the last 3 elements of the path, which are all about training the mind. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration.
This is where the meditation part comes in, right?
Yep. But it's not just sitting on a cushion with your eyes closed. It's about bringing that same quality of awareness to every aspect of your life.
So like being present when you're washing the dishes or stuck in traffic.
Exactly. And that's the essence of right mindfulness, paying attention to the present moment without judgment, noticing your thoughts, feelings, sensations without getting carried away by them.
Easier said than done, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It takes practice. And that's where right effort comes in. It's the willingness to keep showing up, to keep practicing, even when it's tough.
And when we do that, when we put in the effort to cultivate mindfulness, That's when right concentration naturally arises.
Exactly. It's like a muscle. The
Mhm.
more you exercise it, the stronger it gets. And when that happens, when we can really focus our attention, that's when we start to experience the true fruits of the path.
Yeah.
Greater peace, clarity, and freedom from suffering.
Wow. So it really is a journey, isn't it? Not a destination.
The most rewarding kind of journey.
I love that. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Four Noble Truths, I'm curious, what's resonating with you, listener? What's one small step you can take today to bring a little more peace, a little more awareness into your own life?
Remember, even the smallest step in the right direction can make a world of difference. And who knows, it might just inspire someone else to take a step too.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder those possibilities. Until next time, may you be well, may you be happy, and may your journey be filled with peace and purpose.